Monday Night Raw moves to Netflix tonight. Yes, that's right, the long-anticipated deal finally kicks in this evening as Monday Night Raw makes its debut on the huge streaming network. Huge is an understatement, but it makes its debut tonight. The world is anticipating a fantastic episode of Monday Night Raw, and it's got me thinking, how is it going to look? How is it going to feel? Are we going to see changes? Is the ring mat going to throw us all off? I am really excited to see how Monday Night Raw looks and feels on Netflix. So, on that note, it's time to take a trip down memory lane and look at some of the best Monday Night Raw sets in the history of WWE. So, I am Ryan. Ryan? I'm not Ryan. I'm Ryan. Not Ryan. I'm certainly trying, but I am Ryan from Wrestling Forever, and it's time for a wee tier list. Join me. Hello and welcome to Wrestling Forever. For the first time on this channel since Billy joined, I'm here all by myself, which feels rather strange, but I had an empty day today, and instead of just sitting around all day waiting for Monday Night Raw to debut on Netflix tonight, I thought I'd be proactive about it. I thought I would try something new, and that's a wee solo tier list on the channel while Billy is off performing all around the country. That's right, he's a much more successful man than me. I don't need to be reminded of it, thanks very much. I want to talk about the aesthetics of Monday Night Raw. One of the reasons I'm such a big wrestling fan is because of the over-the-top presentation. When you watch for the first time as a child, you're blown away by the sets, the music, the pyro, everything in between. It's not just about the wrestling in the ring when you're getting into it at a young age, it's about the presentation that goes alongside it. And one thing that Raw done so well for years was made it feel like such a big deal. Despite it being on every single week and sometimes getting a little bit run-of-the-mill, it felt special just down to the opening credits alone. So, the stage, that was a huge part of it. And today, well, we're going to visit all of them. I have my handy tier list in front of me. We are going to rank all 19 stages in the history of Monday Night Raw from best to worst. And ultimately, we are going to figure out what one is the GOAT. I'm sure that we all have different opinions, and nostalgia definitely plays a big part of things here, so all I can say to you is, down in the comments section, play nice, right? See if I don't agree with you, or I have a different favourite stage. It's not the end of the world, it's a bloody YouTube video, so calm yourself. Side note very quickly, I know that there has been more than these 19 I have on screen. If you count stages that appeared for maybe one episode, or the ones that they used in the UK, for example, with the big daft Union Jacks hanging at the side of the stage, I know that there's technically more than these 19, but I'm not doing the one-offs, I'm not doing the special episodes or the UK overseas specials. Get yourself so far to We're going back to the start. The first ever Raw set from 1992. It was in the Manhattan Center, and it was revisited a few years ago, if you remember rightly, for the 25th anniversary show when they had that awful split episode between the Barclays Center and the Manhattan Center. I think it was the Barclays Center anyway. It was a pretty basic stage. They couldn't exactly do much in the Manhattan Center. It's not a huge venue, and of course it's very, very old. So it was just a red carpet with a curtain. And in terms of sets, well, you know, that's not much, to be quite honest with you. But one thing I feel like I'm good at is weighing up the situation. And to be honest, I think the first ever Monday Night Raw set is great. I would say it's great. You know, I think it's fantastic when you look back on it, considering the venue they're in. And it's more the setup itself that does really well. The kind of lights behind the seating, the ICO Pro banners hanging from the balcony. I really enjoyed the set of the first ever Monday Night Raw and the first few Monday Night Raws, even if it is just a red carpet and a curtain. Sometimes simplicity is good, and yeah, it's aged well, I would say. I really like it. I'm a fan of it. I think it's great. So the one that followed the Manhattan Center episodes was the Neon Archway, which we got so used to in the early 90s. Well, I say we, I was born in the year 2000, but the one that you guys got used to if you were a fan in the early 90s. And for that reason, I'm going to say mid, because I don't think of this as a Raw stage. When I see that Neon Archway, I don't think of Monday Night Raw, I just think of WWF. They were using this at pay-per-view events, house shows. I'm pretty sure it got used at WrestleMania, if I remember rightly. And it doesn't scream Monday Night Raw to me. So, do you know what? I'm going to drop it down. I'm going to say not a fan. I am a fan of the overall aesthetic of this, the ring aprons, everything else, but it just doesn't scream Monday Night Raw. I mean, they had one Raw banner in the corner. No, it's not a fan. There you go. It's gone down there. And do you know what's joining it? This one. This was the one that followed in like 1994, I think. And it was the first version of this stage. And the reason I don't like this one is because, well, it's got a big daft Titantron right in the middle of the A, which makes it look like RW. Doesn't make it look like Raw. It just looks like RW. The Tron was such a stupid part of the stage here. I mean, I know we need them in these arenas so we can see what's going on, backstage segments, stuff like that, but surely there was a better way to incorporate it, and they must have found that, because the next version of the stage, they lost the Titantron in the middle. It was the just RAW, the Raw letters. I don't know if the Tron moved above or to the side, but they finally figured out, hey, it looks quite daft there, and for that reason, I think this is iconic for some people. You know, they've brought this back on a couple of occasions on special episodes. I think it's quite mid. I don't know. I feel like technology was getting good enough to have something better than 3 cardboard cutout letters. You know, it was the mid-90s. It wasn't the 70s. And I don't know. I'm just going to place it in mid. And now we enter the era of proper wrestling sets. Proper stages that are very tall, very wide. The kind of basis for what we came to expect from wrestling sets started in the late 90s in WWF, and we had the first iteration of the Attitude Era Raw is War set. And for me, the first version of it, it was pretty mid. In fact, I'm going to put it below the Raw lettering, because this was them just finding their footing. They got their first ever, as they called it, Titantron at the time. That came in. It was huge. It was massive. But they didn't quite figure out the bells and whistles alongside it. Didn't have the big structures at the side yet. It was just lights. They still walked out the wee curtain underneath. It wasn't quite there yet, but it was a good start. It is what a lot of wrestling fans started watching with. I just think that bigger and better came following this. And following this is arguably the most iconic Raw set of all time. The one from 1998-1999, the Attitude Era Raw is War, with the huge scaffolding pillars on each side of the stage. It is easily one of the most recognisable setups in wrestling history, and for that reason we're going to fly it straight up to great right now. I think for most people this is probably their favourite version of this Raw set, and no wonder, because it's so bloody iconic. I love it. Stone Cold Steve Austin loved it, and yeah, it's just it's a fantastic stage, a fantastic setup that I honestly wish that they would bring back, because I really do think it's better than some of the modern ones. Spoiler alert, I don't want to ruin the rest of the tier list. And that brings us to the final version of the Attitude Era set, and I think, honestly, might be controversial, my favourite version of the Attitude Era set. I think they figured it out perfectly right before they changed to the Ruthless Aggression Era. I love this set. The steel structuring that they added in, the screens at the side. I just love this setup. I genuinely think that it might be up there for the GOAT conversation when we get to it. We're leaving it for the end, but I think it might be up there. I just love this. I just love it so much. It had that raw vibe to it, that kind of metal, this is wrestling vibe. It wouldn't maybe fit nowadays with all the hip-hop music that we have, but this certainly fitted the kind of heavy metal, grunge wrestling that it was back in the late 90s. It was a great stage for me. We moved into the Ruthless Aggression Era, where we got the first of two versions of the Ruthless Aggression Era stage. And I don't know what one I prefer. Honestly, both of them are very similar. Let's just get to business here. There's not much different. The only change comes with the side paneling. On the first version, we had these kind of 3D light up shaped things. Don't know what you want to call it. And on the second version, we had kind of square pieces of LED screen. Honestly, if I was to tell you, look, both of them are great stages. There's not much between them, I think. Honestly, do you know what? I'm just going to shove them both up to great for the time being, because they are both great. I'm not going to say one's mid because they made a slight change halfway through the Ruthless Aggression Era. Both of them are really, really good. However, I must admit, I think the first version is my favourite. You know, I think the first version is my favourite. I would drag it up into here somewhere. I'm gonna leave it up here just now for the GOAT conversation, and I'm gonna move this one up to here on my list, 4th on my list for now. Both of them were fantastic. Both of them so iconic. I mean, think of some of the moments that we had with this Raw set. You know, Jeff Hardy and everything else that happened. You know, this was a real iconic era, and for people my age, it's the era that a lot of us got into professional wrestling. WWE. I loved it. Fantastic. They're so iconic. And so, with the dawning of the HD era, died the death of character-filled stages. Yes, from this point forward, we lose all individuality, personality, and character of the sets, and we become lifeless LED screens. Yes, that is what happened post-2008 when WWE went HD and PG. But on that note, I don't think all of them are terrible. Some of them I actually cherish. Some of them were some of my favourite times following professional wrestling, and that goes right up until 2024, where we stand right now. But it was a huge change. We went to HD, LED everywhere. As time went on, we eventually became LED ourselves with the barricades, ring aprons, and everything else. Ring posts going LED, but it all started with the set in 2008. And honestly, the first version, I think it's great. I think the first HD set was fantastic. I thought it was a good change. It was sad to see the classic Ruthless Aggression Era ones going. For a lot of people, that was a heavy adjustment, but I actually really liked the first edition. I'll put it at the bottom of great for now, or towards the bottom of great. But the first one I liked, with the big spherical cylinder thing at the side. I loved this. You know, I thought it was great. So, good start for the HD era. They slightly tinkered it, moving into the late 2010s. I think in 2010 it changed to this. This is the stage that CM Punk cut the famous pipe bomb on. And for me, I would have to drop this one into mid. I'm going to put it at the top of mid. I just don't think it offered any improvement on the one that was prior to it. Taking away the big cylinder, I think, made it look less, like there was less effort put into it. I don't know. It was pretty mid. And then that led into one that I'm going to be quite frank about here. I was not a fan of. Nope, I wasn't a fan of this stage, and I'm going to drop it in to not a fan. I grew to like it as time went on, but it just felt like such a boring vanilla version of the one before it. And this was what they used from Raw 1000 up until 2016. So we had like 4 years of getting used to it. I don't know. Maybe it was the period of time that it was used that just puts me off this stage. Maybe it's the fact that CM Punk was gone. Maybe it's the fact that we were living through so much garbage. I don't know what it was about this stage, but it just never worked for me. It just felt so boring, so vanilla. And really, I believe this. I might be wrong. Let me know if you agree or not. I genuinely think this is the stage where wrestling fans started losing stages, losing sets. We started seeing the phasing out of pay-per-view sets. This was the setup that became the pay-per-view setup. If you remember rightly, it was like 2014, I think, where they started ditching individual pay-per-view sets. 2015, they were gone entirely. And it was this stage. And for that reason, I have such a hatred of it, because it took away everything that was great about a pay-per-view. It took away everything that was great about the personality between Raw and SmackDown. I hated this stage. Did I hate it that much? No, but I'm going to move it right down to the bottom of not a fan. I think, spoiler alert, there is ones I hate more. The next one is the very briefly used 2016 setup. So briefly used, it was actually hard to find an image of it in use. And it was the one that they used when the brand split started in mid-2016 and very quickly ditched it after SummerSlam 2016. So we'd barely seen this stage, if my mind serves right. And I quite liked it at the time, but looking back on it, I feel like it was WWE going a little bit too heavy on their LED props and their LED setups and trying to appease the fans who were unhappy with the stages at pay-per-views. I don't know. There was something off about this stage, and I think that's the reason we barely seen it. So, looking back on it, I would say I'm not a fan, but it's so hard to judge because it was so little used. Talking about SummerSlam 2016, that's when this set was debuted, and I remember that night watching SummerSlam 2016 live, and me and all my friends in the group chat were going crazy because we thought this was the return of unique stages. We were like, oh my god, this is a new stage. This is a stage we've never seen before, and it's at SummerSlam. Our pay-per-view stage is back, is that it? No, because this was used on Monday Night Raw the next night, and then used for every Raw following it for the next couple of years. It became the new version of this stage here. It was the one that we've seen basically all the time. But what I will say is, I actually really liked this stage. I thought it was pretty great, to be quite honest. In fact, I'm going to put it up here. I don't know, it felt big, the ramp seemed long, I liked the LED flooring, contrary to everything I've said about LED in the past 5 minutes. I actually really liked this. I don't know, there's just something about it. And I'd kill to have it back nowadays, to be quite honest. And then its little brother came along, which I don't think lived up to the same... Yeah, I don't think it was as good. I'm going to put it at the top of mid, but it was exactly that. It was mid. It felt like a downgrade for me from this stage. It was almost as if there was like budget cuts and Vince said, let's make everything just a little bit smaller. Just a little smaller. Not small enough that people notice, but small enough that people will be like, there's something different here. I don't know. It was very similar, but slightly different. And it just felt smaller. The ramp seemed to magically shorten, in my opinion. I don't know. This was actually the SmackDown stage, I believe, at first, and then it eventually just became both. Yeah, pretty mid. I much preferred this one here, the Big Brother, I would say. The last stage before COVID, let me get it done and out of the way, I hate it. I hate it. It's arguably the worst one for me. I just never liked it, and people might be thinking, what? I liked this stage, it was different. It was, I hated that stupid curve. This was when LED went mad. I was like, right, we do not need a curved LED ramp. I know that curved TVs are coming into fashion. Curved monitors are a thing. We don't need a curved Titantron. And it just looked silly. I thought the cutout, the door on the screen where they walked out. I'm like, why? It just looks so daft, and they went so LED heavy on this. I'm glad that COVID brought it to an end, to be quite honest, because we probably still would have been using it for a long time following COVID. And no, I never want to see it again. I hate it. The next one feels harsh to even count. It's the Performance Center. And it was the Performance Center, wasn't it? So how harsh can one be on the stage that they used in a literal gym? You know, I shouldn't even have involved this, to be quite honest. Let's just put it at the bottom of mid. They done what they could do. You know, and I actually just appreciate them putting on the shows in the first place, because they very easily could have went, nope, we'll shut doors for a while, we'll see you when we can get back in an arena. They didn't do that. They gave us the shows to the best possible production value that they did, and the stage done its job at the end of the day. So, yeah, I'm not going to be too harsh on it. As I edit this video, it has suddenly dawned on me that I completely forgot about the Thunderdome. How did I forget about the Thunderdome? I don't know. However, I'll put it in mid. Let's just pretend it's in mid. It was the bloody Thunderdome. I just want to forget that it ever happened. Which leads us to the last stages before the Netflix era. And I start off with a bang here with one of my least favourites, and maybe my least favourite Raw stage of all time. The big screen. The big telly, as we'd call it here in Scotland. I hated hated this stage with a passion. I yearned for it to be gone. I despised it. It was so boring, so lifeless. It was literally a flat screen. It was the equivalent of the WrestleMania 35 stage in a Monday Night Raw arena. That was it. It was just a screen. There was no personality to it. I despised it. And I'm so glad it's gone. They basically cut it in half with the stage that we have now. But yeah, I'm just so glad that that one's gone. It was... Oh, I wish they kept us in the Performance Centre instead. And finally, who knows, it might remain the Raw stage for the foreseeable future. We move on to the current Raw setup, the last setup before Netflix, the Halfton 2 version of the big screen, which I would say is pretty mid, to be honest. I'll be generous to it and I'll actually put it here because I do like aspects of it. I love the change from this shit down here. This stage, it just lacks, once again, a bit of life to it, a bit of character. Now that I've got used to it, I'm like, right, I want change. I want something a bit better than this, a bit more imagination behind it. But it's certainly not bad. It's certainly not bad. I think that, you know, the smaller version does it a lot of favours. It's not so heavy on your face. Yeah, I don't mind it, but it's pretty mid. Which means I must decide what the greatest of all time is. What is the best Raw stage in the history of Monday Night Raw? And I am torn between the top three in great. It's got to be one of these three for me. The first Ruthless Aggression Era stage, the last iteration of the Attitude Era stage, and the second iteration of the Attitude Era stage. Those three are the top three for me. And for my winner, and for my greatest of all time, I think I need to pick... And you may disagree. You may find it controversial. I am going to pick this as my favourite Raw stage of all time. Yep, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's the perfect balance between a stage with character and a simple stage where it's not too over the top, it's not distracting from the show itself, but it has the screens, it has everything you need to see, it has all the proper bells and whistles. This stage just had it all perfectly, along with its balance of iconic moments. So yeah, for me, this is the greatest Raw stage of all time, and the list that follows, I would say, I'm pretty happy with that. More good stages than bad stages, I would say. And most of the bad stages come in the last 10 years. So yeah, get your act together, WWE, and bring us some improvement. That is it for today's video here on Wrestling Forever. Thank you for joining me. Me and Billy will be back this week for our weekly podcast, which is back in full swing now that it's 2025. And hopefully you'll see more videos like this soon. So yeah, show us some love, hit like, hit subscribe if you're new around here, that would be much appreciated. Anyway, see you next time.